Hey my loves, you can call me Lashe, and today we'll be cutting and sewing this beautiful gathered gown with basque and inner pockets. So make sure you watch till the very end and check out the timestamps as I'm sure you'll learn one or two things before the end of this video. Now don't forget to leave a like, drop your questions in the comment section and subscribe to my channel. Let's move. To start with, fold your pattern paper into two using the widest part of your measurement, which in this case is our bust circumference divided by 4 plus about 5 to 7 inches. Rule out your starting line and place your shoulder to upper bust length on the starting line. Because this gown does not have the traditional shoulder or neckline, we will treat it like a tube gown. That means instead of placing the beginning of your tape rule on your starting line, you will place your shoulder to upper bust measurement on the starting line instead. This client's shoulder to upper bust measurement is 5.5 inches, but I'll place 5 inches on the starting line, and that is because I'm factoring in the 0.5 inches that I will use to turn the upper bust. So I'll be adding 0.5 inches to all my lengthwise measurements. Don't forget. Now that that's out of the way, go ahead and measure out your lengthwise measurements up until your basque line. So the upper bust line, under bust line, waistline, and basque line. You can decide to increase or decrease the basque line based on yours or your client's preference. Go ahead and rule out these lengthwise measurements. Always label your lines so you don't mix them up, okay? Next, measure and mark out your dart line, which is your nipple to nipple divided by 2. Mark this out on your upper bust and basque line and connect with a straight line. On your upper bust line, measure and mark out 0.25 inches at the part that is closest to your center front. On the part that is closer to your armhole, you mark out 0.5 inches. You can decide to take out 0.5 inches on both sides of your dart line, so the upper bust is as firm as possible. You don't need to mark anything out on the bust line. On the under bust line, mark out 0.5 inches on both sides and repeat this on the basque line as well. Connect the dart line at the under bust to the basque line with your straight ruler and connect the bust line to the under bust with your curved ruler. Lastly, connect the bust line to the upper bust with your straight ruler. Now you basically have your darts marked out. Keep in mind that you can increase or decrease this dart measurement based on how busty you or your clients are. The next thing you want to mark out is the sweetheart shape at the center front. Place the shoulder to upper bust measurement on the starting line and measure out how deep you want your sweetheart plunge to be. I'm making use of 7 inches. Now connect this point to the dart line on the upper bust with your curved ruler. Now you want to mark out your circumference measurements starting from the upper bust. Divide your upper bust measurement by 4 and mark that out on your upper bust line. Replace the dart measurement you deducted and add your sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. On your bust line, since there's no dart reduction, just measure and mark out your bust circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inches sewing allowance. On the under bust line, measure and mark out your under bust divided by 4, replace the 1.5 inches for the dart and add 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. Repeat the same thing for the waistline. Mark out your waist divided by 4 on your waistline, add the 1.5 inches dart reduction and 1.5 inches sewing allowance. Now connect all these lines with your ruler. I decided to extend my basque line from 17.5 inches to 20 inches. If you are doing the same thing, don't forget to extend your dart lines. But instead of connecting it straight down, connect the waistline to the basque line without reducing the dart at the basque line, just like I'm doing right here. You can go ahead and connect the basque line to the waistline. Don't forget that we're going to be having a strap and cupped sleeve situation. If this were to be a tube gown, you go ahead and cut it out as is. But because of the sleeve, mark out your shoulder measurements divided by 2. I'm using 7.5 inches for this client. Once you're done with that, place your tape on your starting line, not forgetting to place it at the 5-inch mark like we've been doing so far. What we are trying to achieve is the armhole so that it's as comfortable as possible when wearing the gown. You want to come down by 2.5 inches at the side. Keep in mind that we subtracted 5 inches to get our upper bust. So placing that 5 inches on your upper bust line and subtracting 2.5 inches for the armhole will give us 7.5 inches. And by the time we turn the armhole with the lining, it will drop to 8 inches. You can decide to increase or decrease this measurement based on you or your client's measurements. Once you're done marking it out, connect from your dart line on the upper bust down to the armhole. I personally don't need to fold my dart to get the accurate continuation line at the upper bust, but I'm going to in case you're working with a wider dart reduction or in case you want to manipulate the dart instead. So fold one dart line over the other, just like I'm doing right now. Hold in place with a masking tape or a pin and use your curved ruler to connect the lines. I'm crossing out the dart lines as we are to cut them out. And that's basically it for the front pattern. Cut it out and let's move on to the back pattern. For the back pattern, rule out the starting line and the center back line, leaving about 2 inches for the zip allowance. And just like we did with the front pattern, place your tape rule at the 5-inch mark on your starting line. Mark out your bust point and back waistline. I said back waistline because your back waistline is different from your front waistline. It is mostly higher. So for this client, I'm making use of 14 inches, but I'll mark out 14.5 inches later to factor in the 0.5 inches sewing allowance. Connect all this point with your straight ruler. On the upper bust line and the waistline, mark out your nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 4 inches for this client, and connect with your straight ruler. On the waistline, mark out 0.5 inches on both sides of your dart line. With your straight ruler, connect this point to the upper bust. Measure and mark out your circumference measurement divided by 2 on the upper bust line and add your sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. Measure and mark out the bust divided by 4 on the bust line and don't forget to replace the reduced darts, after which you add 1.5 inches for sewing allowance. And finally, the waist divided by 4 plus the reduced dart measurement and 1.5 inches sewing allowance. Connect all these points with your curved ruler. Just like we did for the front pattern at the armhole side, come down by 2.5 inches. And because we don't want the back panel to be as high as the front panel, reduce that same 2.5 inches on the center back. You can decide to reduce more than 2.5 inches so you have more of a dip at the center back. Connect this with your ruler. I forgot to include the sewing allowance for the back waist, so I'm currently adding 0.5 inches below the waistline, connecting the lines with my ruler and extending the dart lines. So your center back does not bulge out after inserting your zip. Measure and mark out 0.5 inches on the waistline at the center back and connect this point to the upper bust line. You can add that 0.5 inches back to the waistline at the side, but I won't be doing that as I already factored that in while connecting my lines earlier. At this point, it is advisable to check if your front and back patterns are lined at the side. If not, make sure to tweak them until they do. So by the time you are cutting on your main fabric and joining the sides of your main fabric, everything aligns seamlessly. Mine is aligning beautifully, so I will go ahead and cut out the back pattern, not forgetting to cut out the darts. I didn't cut through the darts, so it's easy for me when cutting on my main fabric. Now to the sleeves. Roll out your starting line on a new pattern paper, measure and mark out your shoulder divided by 2 on the starting line, and come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. You can mark out the 3 by 3 inches for the neckline just so you can accurately connect your shoulder slope line. But we won't be using the neckline for this style. Make sure the slope extends significantly past your shoulder line as we'll be needing the extension for the sleeves. On the new shoulder line, measure and mark out your round sleeve divided by 2 and connect with your straight ruler, extending the armhole line as well. From that intersection point, which is your new shoulder slope, measure and mark out how wide you want the sleeves to be. I'm using 2 inches for this client. On the armhole line, measure and mark out 5 inches. On the armhole extension, measure and mark out 1 inch. This is how wide the straps would be. From that 5-inch mark out 1 inch and connect with a straight line, just like I'm doing right now. Now connect that marked out 1 inch to the 2 inches we marked earlier at the shoulder slope. This is the pattern of the shoulder strap that would connect your front panel to the back panel, and it's on this strap that we'll be fixing the cropped sleeves. Go ahead and add 0.5 inches sewing allowance to the up and down part of the pattern. You don't need to add sewing allowance to the sides, as we want the straps to be as tiny as possible. Cut out the pattern, making sure you don't cut the sewing allowance you added at the top and bottom parts. And now to the cupped sleeves. Fold your pattern paper into 2 and mark out 4 inches vertically and 4.5 inches horizontally. Add 0.5 inches to the horizontal measurement to serve as the sewing allowance. Connect both points as you would connect your sleeve cap and cut the pattern out. From the horizontal line, measure and mark up 0.25 inches and connect that to the sides, after which you cut out the marked out parts. This would ensure there's a bit of curve to the cupped sleeves. Now open up the pattern and roll straight lines on the pattern, just like I'm doing right now, so you can slash these lines with your scissors. Make sure not to cut all the way through, as that might make things a bit difficult for you. Once you're done slashing the pattern paper, place it across your main fabric, making sure to spread the slashes open. Make use of your pins to hold each stripe down. Once everything is properly pinned on your main fabric, go ahead and cut your main fabric following the shape of your pattern paper. We'll be using the main fabric to serve as lining, so go ahead and cut that out as well. To sew this, you want to run a straight stitch across the lower part. Flip it over and run a basting stitch across the top to gather the upper part, which would form the cup sleeves we are after. And we can then join them to the straps, but put a pin in this, as I will explain better once it's time to sew them. Now that we are done cutting the patterns, the next thing is to use these patterns to cut your main fabric, lining and interface. I'll be making use of hairstay. Don't forget to use the straps pattern to cut the main fabric, lining and interface as well. For the front panel, I'll be adding another interface called Warden, the soft one. This is just to make sure the bust area is as defined as possible, such that it is comfortable enough for my client to wear the gown without a bra. So I'm currently marking out the parts where I want the soft wording to sit at. One important point to keep in mind: make sure the soft wording does not reach your sewing allowance area. This will make sure your seam lines are very relaxed when you are done joining. Now that we're done marking everything out, place another pattern paper underneath your front pattern paper and use your tracing wheel to trace out the parts you just marked. After this, use your pen to draw out what you've traced on the new pattern paper. Cut it out and use this pattern to cut the soft wording. Because I'm using soft wording, I'll be doubling the wording just to make sure the structure is defined. So if you'd like to double yours as well, make sure to cut 2 panels of soft wording for each pattern paper, after which you can iron all the interface on the main fabric. I have a very detailed tutorial that I will tag in the description box below. You can also click this floating card to access that tutorial once you're done watching this video. If you're interested in learning the easiest and cleanest method of ironing your soft wording on the front panel. Once you're done ironing your interface on both the front and back panel, the next step is to join your darts using the 0.5 inches sewing allowance. Make sure you keep your lines as straight as possible, especially for the front panel at the bust area. If not, you would have your bust point shooting out as opposed to it being smooth. Make sure to repeat this for your linings as well. For your sleeves, starting with the cup sleeves, run a straight stitch at the bottom part using a 0.5 inches sewing allowance. Flip it over and give it a very good press. For the strap parts, join your main fabric together with a straight stitch at the shoulder, just like I'm showing right here, and repeat the same thing for the lining. Give it a very good press and put a pin in that for now. I will explain how to go about it very soon. Once you're done with all that and you've given everything a very good press, Set them aside and let's move over to the cape, overlap or flounce. Actually, the fashion enthusiasts can let us know what this particular part is called. I made thorough research, but I could not find what it's called. So for this video, I will just address it as the cape. My loves, before we go on, my apologies once again. I forgot to hit the record button, so I missed footages where I explained how I arrived at this. But don't worry guys, very soon I'm going to get another phone or at least enough storage backup, so I don't need to worry about my phone storage getting full while recording. So you might consider actually liking and subscribing to the channel guys, so the channel can pay for the expenses. Thank you my loves. So back to the cape, what you want to do is tape all your pattern paper together, ensuring to tape off the sewing allowance so you can get the accurate measurement of your pattern. This is important so we can use this pattern to cut out the cape. Determine how wide you want your cape to be. I made use of 2 inches, marking these 2 inches at the dart line, the apex of your sweetheart neckline. From that point, measure 2 inches all the way to the center back or your zip allowance, and then you can connect all these points with your ruler or freehand. Don't forget to connect your dart line to the center front or sweetheart's plunge with a straight line. After this, place one side of your taped down pattern paper on a fresh pattern paper, just like you can currently see. Make sure to pin everything down appropriately and use your tracing wheel to trace out the pattern you marked, just like I'm currently doing. Once you're done with this, cut out the traced pattern on the new pattern paper and use that pattern to cut out your main fabric, lining, and interface, making sure to add a 0.25 inches sewing allowance all around. I decided to use my main fabric as the lining so it is sturdy. Lastly, make sure to iron your interface on your main fabric. Just so you can visualize the vision, this is how the cape would wrap around the rim of your upper bust. So the only parts you want to sew are the lower parts that is straight and the center back. Run a straight stitch from one side of the bottom cape to the other side, using about 0.25 inches of sewing allowance, and stitch the center back with 0.25 inches as well. Keep in mind that the center back of the cape would not get to the zip allowance. That means you're not sewing your zip on the cape, but the cape would be as close to the zip, just like you can see in this video. Now back to the strap and sleeves. At this point, you should have joined the shoulder part of your strap, like you can currently see, and you should have flipped over the cup sleeve and ironed it. So to join the cup sleeve to the strap, the first thing you want to do is sew a dart at the midpoint of the cup sleeve. From the lower part, measure and mark up 1 inch and use 0.25 inches to start your dart at the top, just like I'm marking out. Repeat this on both sleeves, after which you run a basting stitch at the top to pull your gathers. Once you're done, you should have something like this. Flip the sleeves so it's right side with the strap, and the midpoint of the cup sleeve aligns with the shoulder seam on the strap. Place your lining on top of this, sandwiching the cup sleeve in between the main fabric and the lining of your strap. Pin down and cut off the pointy part at the side, if any. Then align the sleeve end to where the 1 inch mark starts on your strap and pin it down, making sure to properly sandwich the sleeve in between the straps. Repeat this for the second side. Make sure to pay attention to what I'm showing, what I'm doing in the clips, so you understand exactly what I mean. Now you take this to your sewing machine and run a straight stitch to join the sleeves to the straps. Once you're done, open it up and give it a very good press. This is what you should have when you're done. So now fold it back to the wrong side, tuck the sleeves in between the straps, and run a straight stitch using 0.25 inches of sewing allowance, making sure not to mistakenly sew the cup sleeves down. Also, make sure not to sew the middle parts that I'm currently pointing at, the parts where your shoulder seams meet, as that is the channel you use to turn the sleeves inside out. Once you are done, this is what you should have. Give them a very good press. This is the cape. As you can see, I've gone ahead to join the lower parts and iron them out. Now it's time to join the half length. Start by joining the sides of the main fabric using your circumference measurement, and repeat the same thing for the lining. We are joining them separately because we'll be using the lining to turn the main fabric, cape, and strap, so we can have a very clean and seamless finish. You will see what I mean in a minute. Once you're done with that, give everything a very good press, making sure to iron the seams open, just like you can see right here. This ensures there's no bulky parts when you turn your main fabric with your lining. The next step is to figure out where you want your straps to be. I am making use of 6 inches from the center front, so the straps is just before my client's shoulder. Fold your front pattern into 2, making sure it's properly aligned so you can mark the same 6 inches on the other side. Now start by pinning the cape on the main fabric, following the rim of your upper bust just like I'm currently doing. Pin all around till you get to the center back and repeat the same thing on the second side. At this point, cut out the extra material on the cape that extends past the beginning of your zip allowance and join the end of the cape with a straight stitch, if you haven't before. The next thing is to pin your straps on the 6-inch mark at the front. To get the accurate measurement for the back, you can fold the back panel towards the back and mark on the back panel the same place where the front strap is pinned. Or you can decide to measure what you have from the side seam to where the strap is pinned at the front and replicate this measurement from the seam to the back panel. Whichever method you decide to use, once you have the back panel marked out, flip your straps just like I'm currently doing and pin the right side of the strap to the right side of your back panel. Repeat the same thing on the second side. You can decide to run a straight stitch across the rim of your upper bust, capturing both the cape and the strap, before you then sew another straight stitch using your lining to turn your main fabric. But what I've decided to do is to run a straight stitch, capturing everything at once. So if that's what you're doing as well, place your lining on the main fabric just like I'm currently doing and use your pins to hold everything down up until the center back. But before joining the rim of the upper bust with a straight stitch, run a straight stitch at the center back, joining the lining and the main fabric. Keep in mind that your cape should not get to your zip allowance, so that means you should not sandwich your cape in between the lining and the main fabric when running a straight stitch at the center back. Repeat the straight stitch at the second center back, after which you can run a straight stitch at the rim of your upper bust from one center back all across to the second center back. One tip I can give you while turning the main fabric with your lining is when you get to the plunge of your sweetheart at the front, notch both the lining and the main fabric so your plunge can be as sharp and relaxed as possible. To make sure that your lining does not bleed towards your main fabric at the front, you can top stitch the rim of your upper bust onto the lining. Don't forget to notch before top stitching so everything lays flat. Once you are done, give everything a very good press and this is what you should have. Now that we're done with the half length, the next thing is to cut out the gathered panels. We'll be cutting them into 3 parts, 1 for the front panel and 2 for both back panels. And the reason for splitting them into 3 is so we can insert the invisible pockets. I'm sure you can relate to the fact that every lady appreciates their outfits having pockets. At least I know I do. But if you are deciding against adding pockets, you can go ahead and cut one long panel. For those who don't know how to get the right measurement for the panels, let me put you on real quick. Measure your front panel like I'm currently doing and multiply whatever you get by either 2, 3 or 4, depending on how full you want it to be. I multiplied mine by 4, and it's basically the same thing for the back panel as well. Measure what you have there and multiply it by 4. But you can decide to add extra 2 inches that will serve as the zip allowance. Once you have your panels cut out, run a basting stitch at the top of all the panels to pull your gathers like you can currently see on your screen. At this point, you want to make sure you insert your pocket and join the front panel to the back panels before you go ahead and attach the gathers to your half length with a straight stitch. To cut out your pockets, measure and mark out about 8 by 8 inches and use 0.5 inches of sewing allowance to join your pockets like I'm currently showing, making sure to not join the opening of your pocket pouch. You have to join the upper part of the pocket as well to close it off. I've gone ahead to join the pockets to my gathered panel and join the gathered panel to my arm length. For the lining, just cut out one continuous panel. For the measurement, you can use the circumference of your waist times 2 or 3. Place the lining like you can currently see on your screen and run a straight stitch, making sure to add pleats to the lining as you sew. Once done, flip it over and give it a very good press, and this is what you should have: a seamless finish. At the center back, flip the lining over the arm length just like I'm doing and push the arm length inside so you can join the main fabric and the lining of your gathered panels with a straight stitch. So by the time you turn it over, you have a closed finishing at the center back. Repeat this at the second side and go ahead to insert your zip. And here you have it, guys, the final look of this beautiful gathered gown with Basque, invisible pockets and cupped sleeves. What do you think, my loves? Did we do justice to this recreation? Thank you so much for watching up until this point. You guys are the real stars. If you are still here at the end of this video, kindly drop a star emoji in the comment section. I would love to personally thank you. Feel free to drop your questions or outfit requests you would like me to create a tutorial on, and I'll be more than happy to. Please, my loves, make sure to give this video a thumbs up to support this channel. Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you get notified immediately after I post. Until the next video, bye!